With me covering Ethan and Hila Klein's Fall from Grace recently, I feel like I need to make one thing pretty clear here, and that is that between the two of them, Hila Klein is by far the worst one. That is not to remove any sort of responsibility from Ethan. You know, he's an adult. Defending Zionism and genocide just because your wife is a Zionist who supports genocide is not an excuse for it. But nonetheless, you can notice that when they breach the topic, Hila is the one who has the really extreme Zionist opinions, and Ethan always seems to sort of be like negotiating her down a little bit or trying to downplay the real gravity of what she's saying. Like in the recent Yoav Gallant clip when Hila is like, Gallant isn't a bad guy, he's a good guy, you know, everyone loves him. And then Ethan Klein is like, oh, so you mean he's like a moderating voice. Now, Ethan's position is still Zionist, still genocidal, still downplaying actual modern-day Nazism, but Hila's position is on like another level, right? And it's pretty obvious to me that Ethan is sort of talking himself into this corner out of this devotion that he has for her. Because, you know, he's way too far in being married to this Zionist, having his whole image tied to this Zionist, having kids with this Zionist, that he can't just back out now. He is well and truly full on, stuck into it. There's no turning back for him. You know, Hila Klein is very famously an Israeli, born in Israel, who was a part of the Israeli military, who didn't find her desk job in Tel Aviv fun enough, so she asked to be transferred to the occupied West Bank, whereby she helped to coordinate and do logistics for terrorist activities of the IDF there, and personally volunteered to go on an Israeli terrorist raid there. And that's just what we know of what she herself has said. For all we know, there's far worse. But whenever they breach this topic, it's just so obvious that she's the worst out of the two of them. And really, there's no better way of illustrating this than her reaction to Rudy Giuliani's claim that the cause of the Israeli-Palestine conflict is that Palestinians indoctrinate their children at age 2 to hate Jews. That was the claim, and this was her reaction to that.
Israeli Rudy was saying that Palestinians are taught at 2 years old to kill Americans.
That's pretty spicy.
Yeah.
Do we have that one?
Like Kamala,
the other one.
I could add it. Israeli.
Sorry, it was to kill Americans,
Rudy was saying
not
that.
Jews, but I'm sure she believes that about Jews as well. But yeah, she clearly does not see Palestinians as people. That's all there is to it. She does not see Palestinians as people. And Ethan Klein is sort of this incredibly dumb guy, incredibly easy to persuade guy. And if you didn't know that story of how they met each other, they have an entire video of it. I can show you it on the screen, so if you want to watch it, you can look it up yourself. It's called How We Met at the Holocaust Museum from 7 years ago. You know, sounds like a nice, you know, really meaningful story. They met at a really like important place for Jewish history and all that stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Great. I suggest you go check it out and watch it in light of what you've learned more recently, at least most of you will have learned more recently regarding what Israel is, what it really is. So they met at a Holocaust museum while Ethan was in Israel on Birthright. If you don't know what Birthright is, it is basically a settlement campaign, a campaign that the Israeli state engages in to recruit Jews from outside of Israel to try and convince them to come to Israel and become settlers there and help to further the Israeli colonial project and the genocide of the Palestinian people. So Ethan Klein, back in 2007, he would have been like 24, 25 back then, so clearly an adult responsible for his actions. You know, he saw this birthright thing and he was like, cowabunga, baby, apparently it's my birthright to go to Israel and just like move into a Palestinian house. He didn't see anything wrong with that. Didn't see a problem with it. I mean, he's Ethan Klein. You know, I don't expect him to really have enough knowledge or intelligence to even think critically about anything, let alone something that benefits him. So he goes on Birthright, and what they do on Birthright is like try and entice these like American or British or European Jews or whatever to come and colonize Israel with them, is they like set up these coincidental meetings between the people who are going on Birthright and like young IDF soldiers. So what would have happened here, and I'm 100% sure this is what happened, because it is simply what happens on these trips, is Hila Klein and other soldiers were sent to be at this museum coincidentally at the same moment as Ethan Klein's Birthright guided tour was at the museum. And the aim in doing this is that they get these people to mingle, and they get them romantically involved with one another to create interpersonal ties between them that cause the people who are on Birthright to be more likely to want to return to Israel because, you know, they found a girl or a guy they like when they were there. And, you know, that gives them more incentive to come back, perhaps more incentive to go back and live there permanently. That's precisely what happened to Ethan Klein. Like, the honeypot worked on him. Hook, line, and sinker, they got him. And now here he is 16, 17 years later, defending his Zionist terrorist wife, no matter what, no matter how far of a hole he's got to dig himself. I could not imagine a better example of the success of the Birthright propaganda project than Ethan Klein. They got him. They got him completely. A resounding success for Zionist colonialism. They have a devoted shill and follower for life who is far too tied to his disgusting Zionist, racist, genocidal wife at this point to ever really see the music, to ever really face reality, to ever be able to disconnect himself from her views and what she is. So make no mistake here. Ethan is obviously to blame for his own actions, his own words, but the one who, I'm not going to say that Hila is calling the shots. I don't think she's literally telling him what to think or anything, but I think she has certain views on this that have always been incredibly extreme. You know, average Israeli stuff is extreme. To us, to them, it's not. Like incredibly extreme, genocidal, pro-colonialism, Zionism. And Ethan Klein, this uncritical dumb guy that he is, you know, got with her to the extent that he moved to Israel. He got free Israeli citizenship just by virtue of being born Jewish. He lived in Israel through the course of multiple mass killing campaigns by Israel against Palestinians, knowing what Israel is doing in the West Bank, knowing fully well what Israel does to Palestinian citizens of Israel, the internal apartheid, knowing all of that. But his wife is an Israeli Zionist, so he honestly doesn't care. That's all that really matters to him. And it's just a pathetic situation. It's not, I'm not going to say it's sad. He got himself into this. It's not sad at all. It's pathetic. Pathetic, and both of them are guilty of what they believe, what they spread, the lies they tell, just to make themselves feel better about their inability to account for their past, to account for their past beliefs, to account for their past actions in any sort of honest way. And thus, all that they can manage is these completely untenable arguments where they just double down on the bullshit they spread and try to falsely equate their opponents with themselves, because their opponents support resistance to Israel, and according to them, that's just as bad as Hila Klein literally terrorizing Palestinians personally in the West Bank and telling us stuff like 2-year-old Palestinian children are indoctrinated to hate, as if Palestinians don't have a valid reason to hate the USA and Israel for genociding them. Oh, and one more thing that I just wanted to address here while I have the opportunity is regarding Hila Klein's time in the IDF. I think I was actually way too nice to her because they keep making arguments like, come on, you can't blame her. She was forced into it. She was a conscript, blah, blah, blah. And I've already dismantled those arguments on their terms, but I also think it's a dishonest red herring argument in the first place because it implies that Hila Klein did what she did very reluctantly. You know, she was against it on principle rather than just against it because she didn't really feel like it was, you know, fun or a good use of her time or something. And for her, it was the latter, right? She's not against the IDF. She's not against what the IDF does. She doesn't think that the IDF is a terrorist organization that she was lamentably forced into serving. No. She thinks the IDF is pretty much all fine and dandy. She's okay with what they do. She's okay with the people who serve in it, even the voluntary ones. So for them to use the argument of her being conscripted into it as if that absolves her, when she doesn't regret her time in the IDF at all. It's not like she's solemn about it. It's not like she's some American soldier who went to Iraq and now says, man, I did some horrible things there. I really regret joining up. I'd never recommend it to anyone. Please don't do it. I'll make you complicit in crimes or whatever. No, she's not like that. She supports Israel still. She supports all that Israel's military does still. So it's just such a dishonest argument. They're just wheezy little liars, man. They really are. Anyway, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. See ya.